He stood at the corner where the Plainsman Hotel sat and kept his eyes on her until the last second he could. Barbara Louise Cotton was 15 years old, small-framed and wearing her everyday clothes, the kind of outfit that did not draw attention in Williston. It was Saturday night, April 11th, 1981, and she had just finished dinner downtown with a boy her mother believed was a new boyfriend and another friend. The plan for the rest of the night was simple. Barbara would walk the few blocks home, cutting through Recreation Park the way neighborhood teenagers often did, and be back at her front door in minutes. The boy offered to walk with her. Barbara said no. From that corner, he later said he watched her turn toward the park. She moved away from the lights of downtown, past storefront windows and street lamps and the last open doors of the evening, and into the darker stretch where the paths curved between trees and open space. The distance was short enough to feel safe. It was familiar enough to feel routine. That was the last moment anyone could point to with confidence and say, that was Barbara walking away. At home, Louise Cotton waited for the sound she expected, the door, the footsteps, the casual voice calling out that she was back. Barbara had responsibilities and habits that made her life easy to track. She went to school, she worked part-time jobs, she saved money with a seriousness that people remembered decades later, telling friends she wanted to go to college and become an accountant. She wore eyeglasses, and she was not the type to leave without thinking through what came next. That night, the door never opened. By the next afternoon, April 12th, Louise called the Williston Police Department. She reported that Barbara had not come home since the night before. In the information recorded, Louise described her daughter as a 15-year-old girl with brown hair and brown eyes, a small build, and clothing that included a tan short jacket and blue jeans. Louise told police Barbara had been with a boy named Stacy Werder earlier in the evening, someone Louise linked to a local business, Cakes and Cones, where he had washed dishes. Even in those first calls, the case carried a problem that never went away. The last hours of Barbara's night were full of competing versions and missing documentation. The most common outline: dinner downtown, a boyfriend who offered to walk her home, Barbara declining, then being watched as she headed into the park, came through what Louise was told and what was later repeated. People close to Barbara would later question pieces of it. Some friends did not remember her having a boyfriend at all. Over time, the story of that evening became both widely retold and stubbornly hard to pin down, because so little was locked in with proof beyond those early reports. 2 days after she vanished, on April 13th, Louise called again with another lead. She believed Barbara might be in Scobie, Montana, with Stacy Werder, possibly staying in room 205 at the Pioneer Hotel. Williston authorities passed the information along, and law enforcement checked. The answer came back: Barbara was not there. After that, the disappearance settled into the long, painful pattern that families of missing people know too well. Days turned into weeks without a confirmed sighting. No friend could say they spoke to her after that walk. No one produced a verified phone call. There was no official announcement of a place she had been found safe. There was only absence, and the way absence changes a house. Every hour that passes making it harder to believe the simplest explanation. The small details of Barbara's life made running away feel less and less believable to the people who knew her. She left behind her eyeglasses. She left behind her belongings. She left behind the money she had been saving, reported by those close to the case as about $3,000 in her account, money she had been building carefully for her future. To her friends and family, Barbara was gentle and kind, and also practical. That practicality was part of the mystery. If she had planned to leave, they believed she would have taken what she needed to function in the world she actually lived in. Frustration grew around the idea that the early response had not matched the urgency of a 15-year-old girl missing from a short walk home. Years later, People in Barbara's circle would say they could barely recall an investigation at all. One childhood friend and neighbor, Sandy Evanson, described the feeling that nobody came asking the right questions, that key people were never interviewed. In their memories, the first days, when a search is supposed to be loud and fast, felt quiet. The park stayed at the center of it. It was not an exotic wilderness. It was a public space in the middle of town, a place kids walked through because it shaved time off the route home. That normality was what haunted the story. Barbara did not vanish while traveling far away. She disappeared between downtown and her own front door. If the last known direction was true, into that park, then she was close enough that someone could have crossed paths with her on the path, close enough that a car could have slowed beside her, close enough that a moment of opportunity could have taken only seconds. As the years moved on, Barbara's case remained open and unsolved. The North Dakota Attorney General's cold case listing continued to describe it in plain language. During the evening of April 11, 1981, 15-year-old Barbara Louise Cotton disappeared. The Williston Police Department remained the contact point, and the case stayed classified as a missing person investigation. Public statements were limited, and the lack of clear answers hardened into decades. Names surfaced and resurfaced. Stacy Werder's name endured because it was recorded early and because the Scobie tip pointed directly to him. The idea of a boyfriend who watched Barbara enter the park endured because it offered a last image, a last known direction. But beyond the names, there was no single piece of evidence made public that could lock the case into one narrative. The story of the evening remained full of gaps, and those gaps became hiding places for every possibility: an opportunistic abduction, a planned meeting no one else knew about, a ride that turned into something else, a decision made in a moment that could never be taken back. Decades later, renewed attention brought new interviews and new scrutiny to old assumptions. Journalists and podcasters revisited what could be confirmed and what could not. People who had carried memories of that night for years were asked again what they saw, who they knew, what they heard in the days afterward. The hope was always the same, that somewhere in the confusion, one verified fact had been overlooked, one person had stayed silent, one memory had never been connected to the right name. But the center of the case never changed. Barbara Cotton was last known to be walking home in Williston on the night of April 11, 1981, after being downtown. She was 15 years old. She was close to home. And after that, she was gone. No confirmed sightings, no discovered remains matched to her, no arrest that explained where she went. For Louise and everyone who loved Barbara, the unanswered question stayed brutally simple. A girl started a short walk home, and the walk never ended. The streets kept moving, the park kept standing, and the space where Barbara should have been only grew wider with time. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.